That rare goalless draw means that Liverpool drop down into second place in the table. They are replaced by Arsenal at the top following their dominant 2-0 win over Brighton. Aston Villa stay in third. It was a scrappy win at Brentford in all senses of the world, while Manchester City are now 5 points off the top of the table after dropping points at home to Crystal Palace. At the bottom, the three promoted clubs make up the relegation spots. Luton have played a game fewer after their match at Bournemouth was abandoned, of course. Nottingham Forest's defeat by Spurs means that they are in 17th, and Everton moved 7 points clear of the relegation zone. They'd be well up and comfortably in the top half of the table if they didn't have that points deduction. We'll be talking about them and that race at the bottom a little bit later on. Darren Lewis and Leanne Sanderson are here to talk through everything with us. We need to start, though, by reflecting on Tom Lockyer. And just to bring people up to date with what happened, you will know, of course, that he suffered a cardiac arrest in that game between Bournemouth and Luton that was then abandoned at the weekend. And Luton have released several statements. They know that people are interested to know about his progress, but at the moment he is still in hospital. And this is what Luton have had to say. They put this statement out yesterday. Our captain, Tom Lockyer, remains in hospital following the cardiac arrest. We understand supporters are concerned for him and that there is widespread media interest in his condition. He's still undergoing tests and scans and waiting for the results before the next steps for his recovery are determined. They can't, obviously, provide a running commentary on his situation, so they request that all media please wait for any updates to be released via the club's official channels when the time is right. They just want what's best for Tom, his partner Talia, and the whole Lockyer family. So they politely ask that his and their privacy is respected at this difficult time. But of course, we all send him our very best wishes for a speedy recovery and continued progress in his recovery from that. And as soon as we know any more, then we'll be able to talk about future steps for Tom Lockyer in terms of his career. Games elsewhere, though, of course, went ahead this weekend. I think we're all just about awake now after that game at Anfield yesterday. It's taken us a while to kind of raise our interest levels again. Clinton, this game was set up to be a big, dramatic, dynamic, maybe not repeat of the 7-0 win for Liverpool last season, but they were certainly hot favourites coming into the game, and that's not how it panned out. Why do you think?
Because Man United just went there and they defended, to be fair. And Liverpool probably on the day weren't good enough to break them down. You've watched Liverpool recently, they've been outstanding. You're thinking with the attacking prowess they've got there, could they go there? You have to credit Man United, even though they made it a boring game, they were under pressure. They've got so many injuries. There's pressure under Ten Hag and they managed to get the result. But yeah, I think I flicked over and started watching something else.
I got all my Christmas wrapping.
Yeah, exactly.
Watching the game.
Yeah.
Look, it wasn't one that grabbed the imagination. Certainly, if we weren't watching it, you know, as a supporter or as a professional, we might well have done exactly what Clinton did and start looking elsewhere for entertainment. But for Manchester United, and they arguably had the better chances of the game as well, even though they were few and far between. Was that the performance they needed, not just this season, but as a reaction to last season's game as well?
I was happy with the result, if I'm being honest. I think we have to be realistic of where Manchester United are at. And obviously, my allegiances are with Manchester United. So when the final whistle happened, I was actually quite delighted with it because last year, 7-0, completely embarrassing. And I thought Manchester United defended very well. The only thing I'll say on the attack, in the first half, there was one that touch in the opposition's box. That can't be happening. Yeah. Of Manchester United. So defensively, very, very good. But on the attack, and I think Manchester United were quite fortunate. Liverpool had an off day in front of goal. Mo Salah, Darwin Nunez, I thought didn't have their best games. And Manchester United were quite lucky that was the case. But if you'd have said to me before the game, and I think any Manchester United fan before the game, take a point, you're taking that all day long, especially because Liverpool are in, a title race.
Yeah, and this is what's interesting about... We'll focus on the Liverpool performance first and then get more into Manchester United after that. But what's really interesting about that Liverpool performance, and in some ways, it's a one-off that they had 34 shots without managing to score a goal. And in other ways, it's a continuation of some of the performances that we've seen from them this season, where late goals, spectacular individual efforts from Mo Salah have got them points that perhaps the performance didn't quite deserve. So it's a mix of short-term and long-term there.
It is. I mean, Liverpool fans will be frustrated, but at the same time, they will know that this was an off day from them. Now, the interesting thing about it being at Anfield, that's the thing that really does strike me, because they'd won all of their previous games in all competitions, 11 of them, scoring at least 2 goals a game in the Premier League. And so everybody expected for them not to have any problems against Manchester United. I wonder if, and these two will know more than me, they showed them too much respect. You know, I think they thought to themselves, the longer the game went on, could United come back to bite us and maybe try? They kind of played within themselves. The flip side of me wonders whether or not they did that fatal thing of turning up expecting to win and maybe coming unstuck. And I think we'll see a very different Liverpool in future games. But this one, I think they've just decided, let's just chalk it down to experience and we move on.
I think it just wasn't working as well. It's one of those days, like you say, that we've had them, where every player turns up. Szoboszlai yesterday was poor, you know, and he's been one of their best players this season. So I think Manchester United were quite fortunate that was a situation where Liverpool players just didn't turn up. And Manchester United, I thought, did an OK job, but still nowhere near the levels that Manchester United are expected to be at.
Can I just say on Man United, I think that they've happened on, a leader in McTominay. I think he's consistent with his performances. He represents the club very well. If you look at the pattern of Bruno Fernandes's yellow cards, they tend to come at the end of halves when the team partially is moaning at the referee. Look at all of the yellow cards he's picked up so far this season. It appears to be around about the half-time mark where he's upset. And as a leader, you need somebody who's going to inspire you in that moment, not somebody who's going to be moaning at the referee and put himself in danger of missing a game like the Lit game against Liverpool. The other thing is, I think you asked about Ten Hag, and when you're under pressure, you want players you can rely on in the trenches with you. And I think, yes, Liverpool did get chances they should have taken, the 34 attempts on goal. But to a man, they all put a shift in yesterday. And that's what Ten Hag needs if he's going to save his job.
Just to go back to the question you asked about whether or not maybe the Liverpool players turned up expecting to win, or whether they showed Manchester United a bit too much respect. Virgil van Dijk's comments after the game might be able to shed a little light on that.
Obviously frustrated because you were superior in all aspects and from the very first beginning, and they were hoping on a couple of counter-attacks to hurt us on the break. And yeah, in the end, you know, they are buzzing with a point and we are very disappointed with a point.
So that's caused a little bit of a stir. It's been seen as arrogant in certain quarters from Virgil van Dijk. And it sort of speaks a little bit to what Darren was asking about whether Liverpool felt if they turned up and did what they had to do, then that would automatically lead to a victory, and that Manchester United, there was some kind of onus on them to play in a certain way in that game rather than to, understandably at times, play for a goalless draw.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Kel, but listen, let me tell you something. He can say what he wants to say, Van Dijk, and I'm the same like that. If he feels like that's how Man United turned out, then that's how they turned up. Man United did come for a draw. They did make the game boring, but as I say, if you're looking at what Man United players will be saying, they'll be saying they're happy with that. It was down to Liverpool to break them down. Liverpool couldn't break them down.
Have either of you ever played in a game where there's confidence and then there's, we turn up, we beat these guys?
No, but I don't think, let me tell you, I don't think Liverpool turned up and think we beat them. You think Jurgen Klopp, one of the best managers, would allow that in his dressing room? And they know the rivalry between the two teams and the fans. They have to turn up. Liverpool fans went away from that game, Daz, disappointed that they didn't take the 3 points.
I'm just more asking, is that a thing? Has that...
What,
sometimes think we only have to turn up to beat these.
I didn't get that feeling from Liverpool either. I just think Virgil van Dijk was frustrated that they didn't win the game. That's the reality. I don't think anything he said was disrespectful. I loved what Roy Keane said. You know, there was a time when Liverpool were in the position that Manchester United are in, and they have to be realistic. Where Manchester United are at now, nobody ever imagined they'd be drawing that game yesterday. Yeah. Nobody. Yeah. I was dreading it. I said it on Twitter. I said it myself. You know, I said, I'm dreading this game because of how well Liverpool have been playing. But ultimately, Virgil van Dijk is going to be frustrated. I've never really got into a game hoping I get a draw out of it. I've never had that mentality. No. But you have to be realistic of where Manchester United are at right now.
It's more asking from the other side. Do you think the Liverpool players had overconfidence, thinking we only have to...
They're going off of what they see from Manchester United, what they're doing performance-wise. If I'm a Liverpool player and we're playing at the top of our game, I'm thinking, yeah, happy days against Manchester United, because 9 times out of 10, there's no philosophy, there's no game plan, and you don't know what Manchester United are going to turn up. So I don't think Liverpool are arrogant going into that game.
I think it's interesting because I'm sort of with Darren. I understand what you're getting at here, and I think as ex-professionals, you two are like, why would you not go out and just give everything on the pitch? I don't understand what you're asking us, but what I think there's a difference between going out and thinking, like overtly thinking, we've got this in the bag, we don't really need to bother with this. And it just taking maybe an edge, just a bit of an edge off your performance to the extent that we saw. So Liverpool didn't play terribly. No. They were just all a bit...
I know exactly what Kelly and Darren are saying. And listen, it's different for me because it might be different for Leanne, but it's different for me. I didn't play for a club like Liverpool. So we were always the underdogs. So we would go with the mentality of that we need to turn up and be 120%. Maybe if I'm in that Liverpool dressing room and I'm looking and I'm one of the midfielders, I've got Salah, I've got Diaz, I'm thinking, it's a day off today because they'll go and win us the game. So I know exactly what you and Darren are saying. You took your foot off the pedal, but me as a professional, every time I crossed that white line, I was thinking I'm playing against superstars, no matter what team you're playing. So it's different mentality. But it's one of those games, because I'll say before the game, I know Leanne's a Man United fan and she's looking at me here. But I'll be honest, I thought Liverpool would beat them 5-1.
We all did.
You've got a soft spot for Liverpool as well.
Yeah, I love Liverpool. I love Liverpool.
But everybody did. I think anybody that knows the game will know.
But that's what I think the point is. That it's hard for that not to get into the players' psyches as well, even if it's a subconscious thing. For it just to have enough of an effect to maybe see that play out on the pitch. I mean, but maybe we're underestimating how well Ten Hag set that team up defensively, because to get a 0-0 draw there after being beaten 7-0, to keep a clean sheet in that game psychologically would be huge. For
I mean, they defended out of this.
I think that was a better point than some of the wins they've had so far this season. When you think about the fact they'd lost 3 of their previous 4, they'd lost all of their 10 of the 13 previous games against teams in the top 8 of the Premier League table, and hadn't won in 13. They were missing Bruno Fernandes, their captain. Whatever you say about him in terms of his emotional instability, going forward, he can score goals. You've got a forward line. Højlund doesn't score in the Premier League. Rashford has only scored once so far this season. No other forward has scored for the club so far this season. You're not getting Harry Maguire, who's not available because he's injured, and he's one of the better performers so far this season. Luke Shaw's not there as well. There is such a long list in the circumstances to become the first team to take a point from Anfield so far this season. Actually, it's remarkable.
Can I just say, though, because you mentioned earlier about turning the corner, right? I feel like that's a number one question that happens with Manchester United, but they beat Chelsea and then they lose to Bournemouth. It's almost like that feeling. So no one that supports Manchester United is getting carried away
but I
with
think
the
that's
point.
More in
we'll
terms
take
of,
that.
I think it's more, Kelly was saying it, in terms of have you happened upon the right combination of players? Because I think some of the A-list, if you like, players at the club, they've been underperforming.
Oh, the front line has been poor.
And sometimes to get through difficult moments, maybe it's some of the players. I remember at Spurs, I don't know if I've picked Spurs as an example, but the season that Harry Kane came of age at Spurs, Roberto Soldado had been playing horrendously. Emmanuel Adebayor had fallen out with the manager. The senior players had been doing horrendously, and their way through that period was with some of the younger players who had come from the academy, who were on the fringes. And maybe the way through this for Manchester United is with some of the younger players and those players on the fringes and those players who are unheralded like McTominay and others, because they're honest and they give you 100%. And there's some level of consistency. And if you don't get that consistency, you get hard work. That's what we got in this game.
I wonder if I'm wrong to draw a parallel. I'm going to ask the question anyway. Between Bruno Fernandes not being part of that squad and a very sensible performance from Manchester United, if maybe losing that obviously he gives them all kinds of threat going forward, and he creates lots of chances, he scores important goals for Manchester United. But the frantic nature of the way that he plays and the way that he behaves, I wonder if that had an effect.
I think Kelly's spot on. What you have to, I think Man United were better against Liverpool without Bruno Fernandes. And you're right, he can, pull something out of the bag. But defensively, I think he would always the emotions gets to Bruno. Can he make a silly tackle, get a yellow card? That particular game, I think it was spot on. But listen, everyone wants Bruno in their team, don't get me wrong.
It's a terrific player.
But McTominay in that 10, I thought worked hard.
Particularly in games against big teams, you need discipline, you need emotional stability. And if you look at that incident right at the end of the game where Dalot was booked for 2 shows of dissent, if Dalot can get a booking like that from the referee, it's a fair bet that Bruno Fernandes would have found his way into the referee's notebook.
He got that wrong.
Well, I don't know. I think what we want, what I want, and I'm sure we would all want to see, is players respecting the referee. And the decision had been made. And so the referee, I think, was right to show his authority in that game. If the referee, so I've been on this show before, and if the referee gets it wrong, I'm right there saying so. But I think in other cases, just because you're a Manchester United player doesn't give you the right to disrespect the referee.
I don't think that was the reason, though. I think just not because it's Man United, I think with footballers, I get what you're saying. I don't like it when they go and abuse the refs and sell that and start hounding them down. I think that's wrong. But to give him 2 yellows in that instance, in that moment, I think...
2 separate instances rather than one continuous kind of instance.
But this is when I think common sense has to come in. And I know that's kind of like a generic thing because different people's common sense, your common sense to mine is different.
Yeah, of course it is.
But you know what I mean? There's a rule. There are rules.
But you know what I think? For us to get to where we need to be with this, it might take a couple of incidents like this. I've often said when I've watched football, and I know how unrealistic it is, but when I see referees being surrounded by players, just show them yellow cards. Eventually, you'll get to a stage where players stop doing it.
And it wasn't Man United throw, though, Darren, as well.
It doesn't matter.
It wasn't Man United throw, though. It has to be said.
He was protesting an incorrect decision.
It was.
Even if he's right, even if he's right, the referee is there to be respected.
Absolutely.
And if we talk about showing a good example to younger players, then you have to take action in situations.
But if you do that, you have to do it every time, though. And I think that's probably the frustration from Manchester United's point of view is if everybody who did that got booked twice for going back at a referee after they've been booked for dissent, then you are going to end up with a lot of red cards. And what you're saying is that's not necessarily a bad thing. All I'm pointing out is the inconsistency.
I agree.
And I'll make a point. I'd have been sent off every week then.
You probably would. But
would you have learned not to be, though?
Yeah, I would have learned not to be. But you know where I knew where to go with the referees? I knew beforehand where I'd speak to them and I know what I can do with the referees and what I can't do. See the first one there, Dalot throws his hand, and then the second one, I don't think he throws his hands at the ref. It's out of pure frustration. It's frustration, so it's away from it. So that's why I don't think he deserves a second yellow card.
I'm just interested in getting your thoughts on the Fernandes situation, because I saw you mulling that over while they were talking about it.
I'm going to defend my boy.
Yeah.
I'm going to defend him. Because he's Man United and, you know, he is the club captain. Yeah. So, but I agree. I don't disagree with what you're saying. You know, the whole, like, picking up bookings when you know you're going to miss the next game, those types of things. But I do think that he divides a lot of people, doesn't he? I think when he plays, I can understand because he does seem petulant. He does throw his arms in the air. But I think when he does score a good goal, no one says anything. Yeah. It's almost like they focus a lot, not you guys, but in general, on, he's throwing his arms in the air and all that. But for me, we have to have players of Bruno's quality. Scott McTominay, I agree with what you're saying. But Manchester United captain long term, that can't be happening. Manchester United want to go in the right direction. I love Scott McTominay. I think he loves the club and you want people there that are like that. But Scott McTominay captaining Manchester United, I'm not sure many people would think that is the answer long term for Manchester United getting back to where they should be.
If you look at English football over the last 50 years, I remember Kevin Keegan when he won the European Player of the Year and he said, I'm not technically gifted as some other players, but I was honest and I was competitive and I wanted to give 100% in every game. And sometimes the best players aren't captain material.
I agree with you.
I think if you took the captaincy away from Bruno Fernandes, actually you might see a better player.
Yep.
But if you are a player of his ability, you should not be missing games against Liverpool ever. There is no way a captain of a top level football club should miss a game of that magnitude, because you need his ability, as you say. He's a terrific player. But if he doesn't have the emotional stability to lead his team into battle through a difficult moment, then I think to myself, is he the right man for that armband?
But that point you just made about Manchester United have always had that player, right? Like Darren Fletcher, Ji-Sung Park. But these players were like able to play. Sir Alex Ferguson used to play Ji-Sung Park in the big games because he knew what he could get. Michael Carrick was a player that I think most men that I've spoken to have played against him will be like, he's one of the best. But I wouldn't say people would consider him in the same breath as Scholes and those types of players. But what I will say is the level of Manchester United has got lower. So the quality, you can't just have players that will, you want them to fight for the club, but you have to have quality. In the first half yesterday, Scott McTominay gave away the ball nearly every time he got it. So you have to have that.
Hasn't McTominay scored more goals than Fernandes? Than Rashford, than
he's done
all
well.
of the superior players in that
No
team.
denying that.
And I think for your team, in terms of somebody who embodies the spirit of the club, he's come through, he represents it well in terms of the way he speaks about Manchester United. He embodies the ethos of the club in so much as he might not be as good as some of his opponents, but he will go to war for you, which is what you want. If you look at the two teams yesterday, who represents a shirt best? The Liverpool players, because they will go to war for you, whereas the Man United players, sometimes they're up for it, sometimes they're not. And I still think, either of you two, I've seen you both play in big games. You never missed, unless you were injured, you never missed big games. And Fernandes missing that game, to me, that's a massive red flag, because you should not be, if you have his ability, somebody who you would want to do anything you possibly can to be the person who's saying, when we go into battle,
I didn't miss because I knew I was going to score, Kel.
Oh, that's fine.
And I was on goal
You've
bonus.
got to have the confidence, and that's not overconfidence or complexity either. Bruno Fernandes.
He's still here.
He's still here somehow.
Yeah, Bruno Fernandes in Manchester United, as they used to say on Facebook, it's complicated. Look, it's also means that the title race this season is great. I don't think we saw this coming at the beginning of the season, that this was going to be as close and as exciting as it is at the moment. So Arsenal are top as things stand, and Liverpool are a point behind them. Then it's Aston Villa in third, because we always need a bit of spice in there to make it interesting. You almost kind of want to give City a little bit, let everybody have a bit of a head start, to give City something to aim for, to make it interesting, because we know what City are capable of. They've got Kevin De Bruyne coming back. We know they go on these brilliant runs come the end of the season. And they're only 5 points off Arsenal at the top of the table. It's more than doable for them. I mean, are we saying it's between those 4 for the title?
Yeah.
Even you lot are having Villa, yeah?
No, I don't.
I'm having Villa.
I don't.
Are you?
I'm not putting. They're in the title. They're in the. Obviously, we talk about them, but for me, it would be the other 3. It would
Why?
be why? Because I just think because they've been there, seen it, done it. The other 3, I think Villa will fall off. I think they've got a great chance of finishing in the top 4. And you can look at me and go, oh, what about Leicester? And
So here's
Exactly.
another element. It sort of picks up a little bit on what we were saying about Liverpool Man United, is that Arsenal, you talk about their previous experience. This weekend, Manchester City drop points against Crystal Palace in a really unexpected late penalty situation. And suddenly, all the pressure is kind of pull a little bit further away. And Arsenal are the ones who've taken that by the scruff of the neck, and they've gone, do you know what, we'll put a fairly commanding and sort of sensible-headed performance in and get a comfortable 2-0 win. Is that maybe what you're talking
Yeah, that's
about
what I'm
when you're
talking
talking about
about.
that previous experience?
Yeah, previous experience. You're thinking, when Brighton have gone to Arsenal recently at the Emirates, they've beaten them most recently. I remember last season beating them 3-0. I was at the game. Let me tell you something. It was a professional performance. It should have been, Kel, it should have been 5 or 6. It should have. They missed big chances. And Pascal Gross had a great opportunity with 10 minutes to go. If he scores, it's a different game. But I just look at Arsenal and I look at the players like Saka, Odegaard. But one player in particular who stood out for me, whose game's gone to another level, Declan Rice. They have a serious player in Declan Rice in there who could take them across the line. But for me personally, I still think it's...
You think maybe they're capable of. They still look very composed. They look... Nobody's really speaking about them as much at the moment. And then they've got this game to come at the weekend at Anfield, where they haven't won since 2012. Now, if Liverpool and their forwards in particular play like they did against Manchester United, that's Arsenal's game. Yeah. But you suspect it's not going to be that kind of matchup when they face each other at the weekend.
I backed Arsenal as well last season when they were top of the league at Christmas, and I was saying they're going to win the league. And then the Southampton game, the West Ham game, they kind of threw it away. Yeah. But I think this Arsenal team, they've been building, and you can finally see things coming to fruition. I think they're pushing. They've obviously, but to mention Declan Rice again, what a player. And we talk about players when they go to teams and they don't play well and they don't step up. He's effortlessly slotted into Arsenal and he's made them a better team. And what I see from Arsenal now, it's a big game at the weekend against Liverpool, because I think, when you go to a place and you've not won at a certain place, it is in the back of your mind and you want to change that. And I think Arsenal are in the best probably position they've ever been in a long time to be able to go to Anfield and get something there, because I love Arsenal. I've spent 12 years at the club. As much as I'm a Man United fan, they've been good to me and I always want them to succeed. And I think, please, come on. Don't just fall off when it really matters. And I agree with what Clinton said about City. I still think City will win the league as much as they're 5 points behind. It's because that mentality, when the going gets tough, they come alive, the pressure. They have those players that can seem to come alive when it really matters. And Arsenal, the last 2 years, the year before that, missing out on the Champions League when they were 2 games. They had 2 games in hand, So every time it seems to get closer, Arsenal seem to crumble at the final hurdle.
Yeah, do you know what? We will talk about Aston Villa as the potential outsiders in this title race a bit, because I think they're fascinating as to whether or not they can,
Look at his
last
face.
the distance. You're getting quite excited about it. I've got a couple. of stats. Don't get too excited. I mean, stay tuned and all that, but they're not that brilliant. But they're quite interesting in terms of what Villa potentially could achieve this season. You know, Roy Hodgson is such a long-serving manager and he's seen as this sort of venerable figure. I love when you see a bit of South London creeping through and you just see
that.
Yeah, we like that as well.
That little bit of fun just coming through in Roy Hodgson. Just a little smile and a giggle towards Pep Guardiola. Nothing disrespectful, just you can see how much he enjoys it. But look, it is going to be really interesting to see what happens because Palace, yes, played well against Liverpool the week before as well, and arguably could have got something maybe should have got something from that game. So maybe the fact that they hold City to a draw isn't hugely surprising. But this is a City side that we're used to being able to see things out. They don't let teams back in like this. I mean, what's the difference, do you think, in them this season? What is the lack of... Because it's not necessarily... I know there are players missing and there's players who've left and they've got De Bruyne out injured. But there's almost a sense of switching off is probably a bit strong, but that the mentality doesn't seem to be there in the same way.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kelly. Maybe it's because sometimes last season they were really good and won everything. As you said, the mentality, are they switching off? But I've seen this before, where Pep will come out and say something and then all of a sudden they go on a fantastic run. I do believe you're spot on, though, with the mentality. I do believe, and I know we talk about how important Rodri is, I do believe they are missing Ilkay Gundogan, who they lost in the summer, because I think he's a key for them. And obviously, Kevin De Bruyne and Haaland. I covered that game on the weekend against Crystal Palace. And let me tell you, in the first half, I thought it could have been 4 or 5. And as you said, they took their foot off the pedal and Palace got that goal. And then momentum goes. And then City, they sit back and you starts getting worried. Pep makes a few changes. You have to give credit to Crystal Palace, but I would never write off Man City.
No, and that's not... And I
know that you don't mean
changing,
that, but you mean it's a mentality
And I don't mean a mentality in terms of a lack of professionalism or a lack of drive or a lack of ambition. None of that. It seems that they don't have that... I don't know, the same killer instinct.
Like cutting edge.
I agree with Kelly.
I don't know quite how to describe it.
I don't think any of us saw that result at all. When they were 2-0 up, you think, OK, formality, City are going to go on to win this game. But I think, you know, a lot of teams have injuries, but you can't underestimate players like Kevin De Bruyne, Mahrez being allowed to go, Gundogan being allowed to go, and, you know, the year before that, Zinchenko and Jesus. I know that might not seem that big of a deal, but they're kind of losing these players and they've not really replaced them, have they, realistically? So I think Pep Guardiola, you know, serial winner, he'll find a way. But I think it's not easy being at the top. You know, it isn't. Consistently, to win it 3 years in a row, no team's ever done it 4. So it's like one of those things where other teams are getting better. You know, they are. Declan Rice going to Arsenal has made them better. Everyone's getting better apart from Man United, but we'll leave that to another time. But you know...
But tell me more about that, because, you know, so this sustained level at the top for Manchester City, why is that hard? What does that feel like as a player when you go out every season and it's, we win it, or is it that all or nothing mentality once it kind of drifts a bit, you're like, well, it's gone. There's the nothing side of it.
I loved it though. When I was at Arsenal, we won everything. You know, we won the Champions League, we won everything. So, and I know women's football, men's football is different, but I loved it.
Psychologically, it's not different.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
it? No, it's the same game.
But we all loved each other.
Let's not get involved in that conversation.
My phone's already going off.
You were absolutely, but you were part of that Arsenal side that was absolutely dominant. But that's why I think you can give us insight into what that sustained level of almost perfection is, and what that takes out of some players. Even if you loved it, you will have been in the dressing room with players where it did affect them, and I don't know what that is. So.
Well, we had injuries and as well, and there was some, like, when we won everything, we had problems along the way as well. But I think whoever came into our dressing room when we got new players in, they knew they had to get involved with what the team, you know, fundamentals were, core values of the team. And I think that's why we were so successful. We loved being around each other. We wanted to be around. When you're winning, you want to be at the training ground all the time. You do extra stuff. But I think it's the mentality when you're not winning, you have to continue to do that. And I think, you know, I left Arsenal and I kind of regretted leaving because I went to Chelsea. At that time, Chelsea weren't anywhere near where they are now. And I was thinking I want to go somewhere else, but the grass wasn't always greener. But I think I loved the pressure of being at the top. I love pressure moments. And I think Pep Guardiola builds his team around pressured players that can handle the pressure. When they can't, you know, he says, see you later.
Yeah,
so,
I wonder if maybe that might be a key to it for some of those players, because they will all respond differently to
like Cancelo,
situations.
for example. He was one of the best fullbacks in the league, and then, you know, you can shed some light on that.
Well, no, I think it's, as you were just saying, it's a continuation, actually, because I think Mid-season, last season, Pep Guardiola sensed a complacency within his team. So he did something to really shock people. He sold Cancelo, and everyone said, oh my word, how could you do that? And he brought in Rico Lewis, and we saw more and more of Rico Lewis. And it was something bold, but it was also a kind of psychological flexing of the muscles, as if to say, you know, if you don't think I can do something big to shake you out of your stupor, I can. And also, I remember at the time he had a go, it was after City 4, Spurs 2, and he had a go at the fans and said, there is a complacency here. You know, and we got to address this. And I think it might well be the case in this window that he might do something again. I do think, as you were saying, the level of the Premier League has gone up. I don't know if we could see the graphic again, but if you look at all of the teams in that graphic, Chelsea, Liverpool, I mean, these aren't small teams they're dropping points against. The Chelsea dropped
He pointed this out, Pep Guardiola, didn't he? He said they're difficult games.
Absolutely.
I think that's why this result against Palace has surprised everyone. Because you can look at some of those teams and go, fine. The Chelsea game, chaos. You can write that off a little bit, or at least explain it in a sort of shrug of the shoulders way. But I think that's why this one feels significant.
I think so. But then that speaks to another of the points you made about Gundogan. I mean, I can understand to an extent he's the wrong side of 30. It looked like a good point to refresh the side with younger players. But if you look at Gundogan, since he's gone to Barcelona, he's even shown leadership there. They're having one or two difficult moments, but he is the guy, even though he's just come through the door, who says, look, we all need to raise our level. And he can do that because he's won everything. And a lot of the players at Barcelona right now haven't done that. And I think his leadership and his ability to grab goals from midfield is missing, along with De Bruyne. I still am quite confident that City are still in this. 3 years ago, I think in the year 2020, 2021, they went 1 game in 4, having won, and they lost or drew the others. And from December 19 until early March, they won 21 games on the bounce. And they are a team that can do that. Then they lost in a Manchester derby, and then they went on to another run. And in the end, they won with 2 or 3 games to spare.
And the other thing with this, with the fewest points after 17 matches under Pep Guardiola, is that this could be a low scoring or a low points total to win the Premier League. Or
relegation as well.
I said, well, it could be for that as well. But that's because everybody can take points off everybody else. And the teams at the top, as you said, have improved. They're all getting results against each other. And in fact, Villa, I think, are doing better than anyone else against potential competitors. But what's interesting about this is that they have got themselves in this situation, but it's almost going back to Leanne's point about the players who enjoy pressure, and that's what Pep Guardiola is going to bring in. It's almost like they're creating a situation where they are under pressure, and it's like, right, now we need to knuckle down. And they're still waiting for that crunch point, maybe.
If you look at all of the seasons where they've won the league, they've won with games to spare. And maybe for 1 or 2 players, it's too easy, you know, and maybe you need to move them on. And maybe it might be that they need this challenge that the other three teams are providing for them. And I think for that reason, this might get more out of them. I mean, what I'd like to see is almost a graphic of the seasons where they've won the league, how many points they've won by, because I think in every one of those seasons, there are 3 games where the B team play, because they've won it so easily. And that's why I'm not worried about that points differential now.
And they won the treble, obviously, and that takes a lot to do out of you in every way, like psychologically, the mentality to keep doing that and keep going again. And obviously there's a lot of people talk about Pep Guardiola, how long is he going to be at the club for, and those types of things. And that could kind of be a little bit unsettling at times as well.
That season where I just mentioned, 2020-21, Leicester beat them 5-2 at home. And it was after that game where people were saying, has he come to the end of the cycle? Can he do it anymore? Ferguson was the only person who'd rebuilt a side and had come again. And that was a season where he went on that long run and defied the odds. And these games coming up, they are quite significant. If they start losing those games to your Evertons and your Sheffield United...
Yeah, Everton at Goodison Park.
It's difficult.
And I know Everton haven't been at their best at home, and they haven't been as good at home as they have been away, but that's starting to come for them. There's a resilience and an organisation around. You feel like, OK, Sheffield United, maybe even Newcastle at St James's Park. You know, you look at Manchester City now and you think, maybe. You know, you look at the fixtures rather than last season where you'd say, they'll be fine.
I still think they'll find a way, though. I don't know why. I just still think they'll find the way to click into gear. I don't know. The standard that they've raised the Premier League to, I think, is a different level. So therefore, it's like when they underachieve, it's like they're drawing a game and we're like, oh my God, Crystal Palace came back. But these things happen. It's the Premier League.
In the midst of a terrible run, they're still only 5 points.
That's what I mean.
Exactly.
Just trying to inject a little bit of jeopardy and spice into the whole situation. But there is a whole new spice with Aston Villa, and talking of spice, they showed a bit of that in their game yesterday. That was very exciting.
It was.
But you know, they come back from 1-0 down to win the game. There's a little bit of needle between the players. There's a little bit of, you know, just pushing and shoving and just a little bit of aggression in there. That's, I don't know, it's not something maybe we've associated with Villa particularly this season.
I like
it's quite
this,
a nice
though.
flavour.
I quite like this. I think, you know, the players receive so much abuse. So why can Ollie Watkins not just kind of didn't say anything, didn't gesture towards them?
So this is Ollie Watkins after having received abuse from the crowd. He said about himself and his family from the crowd, and he shouted back after the
And obviously he was at
goal.
Brentford as well.
I know him personally. When I heard that had happened, I thought something must be said to Ollie Watkins because he's really respectful. And obviously, look, this is more Martinez and Mope. This was brilliant, Kelly. I really enjoyed it, look, because he had already nudged him earlier on, Mope, and he's trying to drag him up. He's like, I'm not getting up. I'm going to lie down there. And then
I love the way the Brentford players came, though, to kind of defend, you know. I like, you know, this is all...
But you'll see Unai Emery in a minute. He'll come in and, hopefully, and Martinez, look, he grabs him.
It's all
Stay
pantomime
away.
stuff. Early pantomime stuff.
Yeah, but we like a little bit of that. 'Tis the season and all that, you know, for a bit of
we don't.
pantomime.
I love all that.
Sorry, that was an open goal.
Look, you don't want to see anything dangerous, and you don't want to see anything that's going to harm another player, and you don't want to see anything, but a little bit of just things being
the way football used to be. Win the tunnel.
Excitement.
Do you remember, like, Keenan Vieira in the tunnel at Highbury? I think those things are okay, as long as it's not obviously causing any disharm to anybody.
If
but
I'm writing about the game, I'm calling that a silly bit of nonsense.
Yeah, it's not. There's nothing gone massively wrong there. You think nothing's going to go massively wrong with Villa? You think they're in it for real?
We'll just leave him for 10 minutes to talk Villa. No, you've been
floor
waiting.
is yours.
No, I'll tell you.
How much of this is the wishful thinking of the journalist in you? What a story this would be.
Partly.
Do you want the stats quickly, just to back you up before you go? So Villa are only the second side outside of the Big Six in the last 20 years, potentially to be top at Christmas.
Wow.
And they could do that if they win on Friday against Sheffield United and Liverpool and Arsenal draw in their game at the weekend. So that's one thing. The other thing is they're on the same number of points as Leicester were when they won it at this stage of the season.
Oh, no.
Stop backing him up, Kel.
I'll give you a third thing. The last time they had this many points, they won the title.
They did.
In 1981.
Yeah, they
So,
did.
I'm still not having it.
Well, look, the thing about them as a team is Unai Emery. He's a guy who always tends to achieve his objectives. Lorca, MRBEAR, Valencia, PSG. He knows what you know, I've got stats, all right. But the thing about the individual improvement of players, which we've talked about them many times on the show, McGinn, Watkins, Diaby, who's come and he's been fantastic. At the back, that defensive stability. Now, the reason why Arsenal and Liverpool have the edge is because they've both got the joint best defensive record in the Premier League. But Villa are right behind them, and they're undefeated so far at home. If they can turn the away form into wins, and they've dropped points this season against Wolves, against Bournemouth, against Forest. You imagine if they'd won 2 of those 3 games, they'd be top of the league right now. And the significance of winning that Brentford game is that they came from behind to do it. And they're starting to realise the significance of those away wins. And if they can continue to string those together, I think they've got every chance. What I think they need to do is grasp the opportunity they have. So this window coming up will be all important. If they can bring in another striker, maybe get some more goals from midfield, why could they not have a chance?
The counter argument to that would be, and only because we've been saying it for a few weeks now, so I'm quite well versed in this argument, is yes, Villa could do that. Equally, Arsenal could go out and get a striker. Liverpool could go out and get a defensive midfielder. Manchester City could go out and strengthen to add depth to that smallish squad that Pep Guardiola likes to have. Right. And all 3 of those teams have been in title races before as a squad. Yeah. And you could argue, maybe not so much Arsenal, but you could argue with City and Liverpool, we haven't seen the best of them yet. So that's the only thing
I think all of those points are all valid. The only thing I would, and look, if cards on the table, I think either Liverpool or City will win it. I don't think Arsenal will, because there's just something about, I think the goalkeepers messing around with that. I still have a bit of an issue with that. But I think Liverpool or City will win it. But I think Villa will stay in it right the way to the end because of that home form, because of that away form that's starting to turn now. And you're right about the fact that the other teams can bring players in. But if you look at Villa's recruitment policy, I can't think of a single player that Emery's got wrong. Diego Carlos has come in at centre half. Okay, he didn't bring him in. Steven Gerrard, very unlucky, brought him in. He got injured and he couldn't play for him. But Diego Carlos has been fantastic at the back. I mentioned Diaby already. John Duran will develop. I don't think he's quite ready yet, but I think he'll get better. If they can get a proven striker in, everyone's talking about Ivan Toney and Arsenal. Why not Ivan Toney and Villa, where he would get far more game time than sitting on the bench behind Gabriel
And he needs
Jesus.
game time.
And he needs that game time, absolutely. So I think there are options for Villa to be involved. I don't think they'll win, but I think they'll stay towards the end.
We made him backtrack because before
he
was
was so
I didn't say win. I didn't say win.
What
I
did
never
you
said
say?
win. I said compete.
Oh, we'll clip that back up. We'll see.
We will.
We'll go back and check on it. But yeah, look, the longer everybody stays in it, the more exciting it's going to be as the season goes on.
In North London, my name is Derek Ray, and joining me for commentary, as always, is Lee Dixon. And this has all the makings of a highly engrossing match. It's Arsenal, and they face Doncaster Rovers.
Well, I'm excited about this one. Great atmosphere in here. Everybody looking forward to this game, especially me and you.
And this is the Arsenal starting 11. Bernd Leno begins in goal. Granit Xhaka plays with Thomas Partey in central midfield. And the main forward here is Alex Lacazette. And he's broken free. Not out of the woods yet. And the referee spotted the foul, but has played advantage. He's in here. Well, he stumped it out of there without much fuss. Well, it's always a tantalising prospect watching Martin Ødegaard close up. Lee, what do you think we might see from him?
Well, the more you give this lad the ball, the better the team normally plays. He switches the ball, he links play from left to right.
To jump in front! A goal in the early stages. Precisely what they had been planning.
Well, as we can see again here, he knows exactly what he's doing and kids all the defenders with the cutback. And all he has to do is get anything on it for a simple goal in the end.
One 0 then. Now potential danger. And a chance, Ødegaard! And a goal! The quick one too! And they've turned this game on its head!
Well, in this replay, you're going to see a 2v1 against the keeper. How does that happen? He'll be asking his defence why he was left exposed. Nothing he could do.
So 2-0 now. Fine cross into the middle. That is a moment he would dearly love.